Double, double, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble. Okay, so that was my rendition of the three witches in Act 4, Scene 1. So again, I say this, I think, too many times for this play, but this is one of my favorite scenes. I love these witches, and this spell that they're casting is actually really, really famous. Those lines are famous lines, and they show up quite often in pop culture, especially when we come to talking about witches. I think even actually The Simpsons had a reference to this in one of their cartoons, their Halloween Treehouse of Horror episodes. So yeah, like Macbeth is important, you guys. We have had this as part of Western European culture for almost 400 years, and it is still relevant to today. So at the end of Act 3, we had Macbeth. He was planning to come talk to the witches. Macduff had decided he wasn't going to show up for any of Macbeth's things. He wasn't at the banquet. And Macbeth is annoyed and frustrated, and he doesn't know what to do about Macduff. And so he says, okay, I have to go talk to the witches. They'll give me some help. They will tell me what I need to know. And so that's where we are right now with Act 4. Act 4 begins with the three witches on stage. They are in a cave. There's thunder, there's lightning, and they are doing something spooky. They are casting some spells. So if you remember from Act 1, I had said Elizabethan audiences would believe in witches. They would believe that there were women out there that did this type of stuff and caused problems for the people of the world. This is basically their spell, and they're talking about all the things that they're putting into their cauldron, making this spell happen. So this is an example of how evil these witches are. Some of the things that they put into their spell. So they talk about this liver of a blaspheming Jew, the nose of Turk and Tartar's lips, finger of a birth-strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drab. All of these things, well, those are humans, one, but all of these things speak to how evil and horrible these witches are. They're just examples of things that would be blasphemous and go against God, because that's what witches would be doing. They would be going against what God believed. And so this part is important in that it just shows that. And then we have one of my other favorite lines. Okay, Miss Blossom, seriously, all of them are your favorite. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Open locks, whoever knocks. So who do you think is this wicked thing that's showing up? Take a guess. The next person that shows up is Macbeth. And with the entrance of Macbeth, we come to see some really important things for the rest of the play. So I need you to make sure that you're paying attention to these things. Okay, so Macbeth shows up and he says to the witches, what are you guys doing? You're doing some real creepy things. I demand that you tell me my future. What is going to happen for me? And the witches are like, yeah, for sure. Like, we'll tell you, no big deal. Do you want to hear your future from us or from our masters? And Macbeth, because he's the king and he thinks he's all that, he says, obviously I want to hear from your masters, not you stupid witches. So they allow these masters, or we can call them prophecies, you might hear that being used, or visions. So anytime we're talking, or apparitions actually is the other word. So anytime that people are talking about Macbeth's visions or the witch's visions, these are the three things that they're talking about. And these are really important for the rest of the play. Okay, so we're going to go over these guys right now. So the first apparition or vision that Macbeth sees, it's an armed head. So it would be like a head with maybe a piece of armor, like kind of like a knight would have, something to keep him safe. And it's just the head, no body, nothing else. And it says to him, well, Macbeth first of all says, hey, like, what's up? And the witches are like, hey, he can read your minds. You don't need to talk to him. And so the first apparition tells him to beware the Thane of Fife. I feel like I have to say those really carefully. So the Thane of Fife is Macduff, and Macbeth already knows this. He knows that Macduff doesn't trust him, that he didn't come to the coronation, that he's off in England doing something, and Macbeth's like, yeah, I already knew that, but like, thank you, it confirmed my fears. I knew that I wasn't supposed to trust him or look after him. Then the second apparition shows up, and this is a bloody child. So you can kind of imagine whatever you think that would look like, but it's a child, and he's got blood all over him. And then this guy says to him, be bloody, bold, and resolute. Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. So this apparition is saying that if anybody who was born from a woman tries to hurt you, it won't happen. So basically, every single person on this planet, right? We're all born from women. He says, okay, I guess there's really nothing for me to be afraid of, because although that first apparition said be scared of Macduff, I don't really need to worry because he can't harm me. He was born of a woman. There's nothing to be worried about. But he does say, just to be sure, I am going to kill him anyways. So he says, but yet I'll make my assurance double sure and take a bond of fate. Thou shalt not live, that I may tell pale-hearted fear it lies, and sleep in spite of thunder. So even though I don't actually have to be afraid of anybody born of a woman, I'm still going to kill you, Macduff, because I'm going to make sure that you can't harm me. Okay. And then we have the third apparition that shows up. And this is described as a child crowned with a tree in his hand. And Macbeth says that this looks like a king, but he's a baby. So what's going on here? This third apparition says, be lion-mettled, proud, and take no care who chafes, who frets, or what conspirers are. Macbeth shall never vanquished be, until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him. This doesn't really make sense to us. There's a couple things in here that are unclear, but basically what he's telling him. So Great Birnam Wood. This is the name of a forest, a bunch of trees. And they are outside Dunsinane Castle. Dunsinane is where Macbeth is going to be. And so this apparition is saying that you will always be king. Unless this forest is able to come over to your castle, you will always be safe. And we're not in Lord of the Rings, so the trees don't walk. So Macbeth thinks, cool, I don't have anything to worry about. Trees can't get up and come find me. I will always be king. So he says, okay, this is really good. I don't really have anything to be afraid about. I don't have anything to worry about. But there is one thing that he has wanted to have solved, more than Macduff. Think back to whose son he was trying to kill. Yeah, so he's still worried about Banquo and his sons. And so he says, I need to know what is going to happen. Is Banquo's son ever going to reign in my kingdom? And the witches are like, dude, you don't want to know that. And he's like, no, you tell me. I demand that you tell me. If you don't tell me, I'm going to curse you. Although the witches are already cursed, so I don't really know what he's thinking he's going to do. And so the witches say, all right, you asked for it. And what this fourth vision is, this fourth apparition or prophecy, is a line of kings. So there's 8 of them. The last one has a glass, a mirror in his hand. And behind that guy is Banquo. And they walk past Macbeth. And as they walk past, Macbeth gets more and more and more upset. And he says, you look too much like the ghost of Banquo. Get away from me. How dare you? He starts blaming the witches. And he says, how could you show me this? Even though he had asked for it. So not too sure why he's super upset. And then in that last king in the mirror, what we see is just infinity lines of kings stretching onward. So what this means is essentially that, yes, Banquo's sons are going to be on the throne for a very, very, very long time. So it's important here to know a little bit of history of Shakespeare and the king at the time. The king's name was James. And he is actually descendant from this man. And so with Shakespeare putting this into the play, it's kind of like him brown-nosing up to the king and being like, yeah, you're going to be king forever. Like, all of your sons are always going to be king. So that's kind of why this part is included. But it also makes Macbeth a little bit upset. And so that's another reason why this is included. But, you know, when you are contracted by the king to write certain plays, obviously you're going to suck up to that person. So following this, the witches try to make Macbeth feel better. They have a little dance. Music plays, the witches dance and then vanish. And then Macbeth is left alone, and he's like, what the heck just happened? I'm in this creepy cave all by myself. His friend, well, he's not really his friend. Nobody really likes Macbeth. So his servant, Lennox, is there. And he asks what's going on. And Macbeth says, did you see them? And Lennox says, no, I didn't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And Macbeth is like, no, the witches were here. The weird sisters. I saw them. And Lennox says, I don't really know what you're talking about. And then we end off with a really important change in Macbeth's character. So he says, time thou anticipatest my dread exploits. The flighty purpose never is o'ertook, unless the deed go with it. From this moment the very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand. And even now to crown my thoughts with acts, be it thought and done, the castle of Macduff I will surprise. So what this is saying, and this is different if we remember Macbeth from Act 1, he's saying, as soon as I have a thought, if it's evil or whatever, I am going to act on it. So remember the first act, Macbeth was like, I don't know, like, can I kill Duncan? It's probably not a good idea. Why should I do this? Da-da-da-da-da. He has now changed. He is ready and able and willing to commit evil deeds, and he is no longer going to think about it, think about the ramifications, what's going to happen. He just says, evil comes into my brain, evil will happen, and that is that. And so he ends this scene here saying he's going to go to Macduff's castle, and he is going to murder literally everything that is there. So shame on you, Macduff, for leaving. Now I'm going to kill your entire family. How does that feel? And that's the end of scene 1.